I am ready. Let me just share my screen. Can everybody hear me okay? Great, okay. So let me, there we go. So I'm going to share some tips for educating professionals, and by professionals I mean people who are already very educated, already settled in their careers. My name, as we covered, is Jess Hoffman, and I'm the program coordinator and instructor for a continuing education course and continuing education initiative through the Brooklyn Public Library. So the course I teach is information literacy instruction for library professionals. It's meant for library professionals of any title at any type of library throughout the state of New York. And so in teaching to professionals as opposed to more traditional students, even non-traditional students who are in school are sort of there to learn, this is continuing education. And so this has brought up some unique challenges. So I'm going to share 3 tips that I have found to be very important as I've been teaching library professionals. The first is that you need to help your students realize that they still have plenty to learn, especially when you're working with librarians who have already been in the field a long time. In the course, we talk about fostering a growth mindset in our patrons and our students, but I'm finding that many librarians don't necessarily adopt the same growth mindset, which is important to being lifelong learners and to fostering lifelong information literacy. And oftentimes it's not because they don't think they can learn, it's because they don't think they need to. But this is not true because the library world and the information world are ever changing. So we need to learn to keep up. And another thing I come across is that when I talk about the information or the infodemic, the misinformation epidemic, many librarians and educators think that this is a real problem, but it's a real problem that affects other people, not them. So I always have to remind people, you are not immune to misinformation. You're not immune to disinformation. You're not immune to confirmation bias, prejudice, preconceived notions, or propaganda. So if anyone needs to hear this today, you are not immune to misinformation, disinformation, confirmation bias, prejudice, preconceived notions, or propaganda. The best thing we can do for ourselves and for our communities and the patrons that we teach is to realize this and mitigate it. My tip number 2 is to manage people's goals and expectations. What I mean by that is that we all know that we're living in this time of more information than ever before. A lot of it is bad information, misinformation spreads. People have called it an infodemic, but I know that's kind of a controversial word. So, but whatever you want to call it, we know that this is happening. So I think a lot of librarians and educators really want to be a caped vigilante who's going to solve the infodemic or the information crisis all on their own. They're just going to take care of it. And when I teach this course, I have people with really big ideas and they are frustrated that they cannot implement this change themselves. And that's because they can't. So I find myself frequently reminding people that making a change can be as simple as having a really meaningful reference interaction with one of your patrons, or it can be as simple as making a display that addresses a point of interest and confusion in your community. It can be as simple as teaching a class on evaluating information and hoping that your patrons go out into the world with a slightly better idea of how to engage with information well and thoughtfully. And if we all make those little changes, it's going to make a big splash. It won't feel like it at the time, but it really will. Tip number 3 is to cater to diverse learners and varied situations. As I said, my course is for all library types throughout the state of New York, which means that I'm working with librarians from the New York Public Library with its huge staff and its huge budget and its iconic lions and its beautiful flagship building. And I'm also working with librarians from little townships like the town of Westerlo in upstate New York with its staff of, I believe, 3. And this means that everyone is coming to this course from a different place and with different needs and different concerns. And so in order to cater to those varied situations and these diverse needs, I have 3 best practices within this tip, and they are to make your content as broad as your audience. Obviously, you are going to have to set boundaries. My course is meant for the state of New York simply because we needed to set that boundary in order to have a manageable group. But I am trying to think about all the different parts of New York and all the different types of libraries that are within the state. Second, keep things as flexible as you can. Again, you need to have boundaries, and you don't want to be so flexible that you sacrifice the integrity of your lesson or your course, but there's no point in being rigid just for the sake of being rigid.
1 minute left.
Thank you. Finally, meet people where they're at, not where you want them to be. This is something I tell librarians as they work with their patrons, but it's also something I'm finding that I need to do when I work with librarians. I would very much like all of the librarians that I work with to know they are not immune to misinformation, but that's not where all of them are at. So I find myself having to remind them and teach them that they can also be vulnerable to misinformation or propaganda. And that wraps it up for me. There's my contact information if you want to get a hold of me. There is my dog. As you can see, she is also sick of listening to me talk about information literacy.
Thank you, Jess. I don't think we're sick at all. That was a wonderful presentation. And wonderful reminder that we all have our own biases and are all prone to misinformation. 100%, absolutely. I see, just looking at the chat here, Esther was asking about, sorry, I'm just scrolling up again.
She really liked that table that you had at the front. Are you going to share the slide with everybody? So right at the beginning of your presentation, you had a great table that Esther liked.
Oh, I certainly can. Yes, I certainly can. If you want any resources about the course or my slides or anything, feel free to email me. I'll even put my email address in and I can send it to you. And I can even send you, I can probably send you the slides from, I took that table, the growth mindset one, I took right out of the course that I'm teaching. So I can probably even send you like more of the slides from that particular lesson if you're interested. So yeah.
She actually followed up with, so you share that table with your students then?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. And it's in the context of, you need to foster a growth mindset in your patrons. But I'm finding that sometimes, even as librarians learn this, they're not fostering a growth mindset within themselves. So it's something I remind people to do.
Linda was asking, how long does the course last as well?
Oh, so it's online and asynchronous. It is 12 hours of continuing education credit. To clarify, my role in this is to guide people through it. The lectures are pre-recorded. I do a couple of them. A lot of them are taught by guest instructors, but I guide people through it and help them. Part of the course is a final project where they're meant to implement some of the information literacy competencies taught in the course into their library. So I do a lot of helping people with that. Do I offer different sessions? The course is grant funded, so it's actually just about to wrap up and I'm not sure what's going to happen with it. So unfortunately, anyone who's interested in the course itself is not going to be able to take the course. But again, if you email me, I can share some of the materials. We're trying to help the course kind of live on in some capacity, either with a different institution or just kind of spread the word and get other librarians teaching similar information literacy continuing ed courses. I don't know if that answered your question. I'm not sure what you meant by sessions, Linda.
Hours is good. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, 12 hours asynchronous. You kind of just jump on and off as you need to, so. Oh yeah, somebody found the course. Like I said, it's going dark at the end of July. So I mean, if you want to sign up and just take a peek at it, that's fine. I don't recommend that you start trying to take a 12-hour continuing ed course right now.
Any other questions or thoughts for Jess? We have a couple more minutes. Or anything else you'd like to share with us?
I have a question. Jess, I'm interested, the people that did attend, were they all part of the library, your own library system, or did you have some people that caught on to it from other libraries, and are they all public librarians that have been taken?
They're definitely not all public librarians. We have a mix. Public librarians are the majority, but we have some school librarians and some academic librarians who took the course. We did kind of limit it to New York State, and that means that we just limited the outreach to New York State, but we did outreach statewide. We sent out postcards to all the library systems in New York State, and just we didn't go beyond New York State because of budgeting concerns and time concerns, so we just didn't really have the resources to go outward. But that said, I think a couple of people from New Jersey and Connecticut, New York City suburbs kind of found their way in, which was fine. Yeah, definitely a mix, just limited to New York State somewhat.
And did you find could you classify the different types of librarians as doing better with their growth? I've forgotten the phraseology. We're willing to learn faster. Are academic librarians, are they as fluid as public librarians who have to deal with a huge variety of people?
Yeah, I don't think there was a strong correlation. And again, I would have to do more to like really answer this, but based on my gut feeling, I don't think there's a strong correlation between library type and how willing people are to foster a growth mindset. What I will say is that the most dynamic, flexible, and willing to learn people in the course seem to be the non-librarians. So your library assistants, your library clerks, your library support staff, they were way more ready to learn in general than a lot of the librarians who had been at their job for a while and were just settled in and doing this because they needed the continuing ed course for their library certificate. And that is a broad generalization because I worked with plenty of master's degree librarians who were delightful, but I do think that there is a way of people who, the more educated they are, the more convinced they are that they know it all, and then they just kind of settle in, and then the world around them changes and they don't necessarily want to learn to keep up.
Well, how about age? Is it related to also age to the people that are not quite at the librarian level with the years of experience? Are they younger, or is that age related, do you think?
I don't know, and I don't always know the age of my students because most of it is done online, so I don't really see their faces unless they volunteer that information, and I definitely never know their exact age. So that is hard to say.
Yeah. And do you have an assessment tool from, do you get do you ask them to evaluate the course? Or,
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes,
good.
as they wrap up, I do. And again, this observation of mine is more anecdotal. It's hard to exactly quantify how much somebody is willing to adopt a growth mindset, but based on comments, independent work assignments, conversations I have with students as they move through the course, I'm finding a lot more interest from people who maybe aren't librarians, and from librarians, I don't know, it just doesn't, they don't feel quite as invested a lot of the times. So.
Okay, thank you very much. It was an excellent program.
Thank you. And I believe someone asked why the course is going dark, and that is because it is grant funded, and my role as the instructor is also grant funded, which means that there will be no one to support the course after the grant period ends, and consequently I am currently on the job hunt. So if you liked what you heard and your library is hiring, I mean, you can absolutely reach out to me about that.
All right. You're willing to leave.
That was
Brooklyn?
awesome. I love that.
Your little shameless self-promotion.
Perfect, just perfect.
How did I get involved with this course? I saw a job posting on a listserv, and I was working in a public library as a public reference librarian during the COVID pandemic, and I wanted out. I'm hoping to make the transition into an academic library role after this. So I knew it was temporary when I took the job. I was unhappy in my current job, and I took a risk. And now I'm here talking to all of you. So I guess it was worth it.
Oh,